Welcome everybody to a Sunset City update, the Sonic podcast update for the classic and modern age. I'm Pup, and I wanted to take this opportunity to fill you guys in on what is going on with the show. Because particularly since last October, there's been a lot of changes. Last year we lost Wayne and Nick from the show. And we kept it going because, Nick was saying we absolutely should, and Suris and I kind of wanted to keep it going out of a sense of defiance, you know? We knew that without Nick and Wayne, there'd be a lot of people thinking, well, the show surely can't go on, but we decided to, continue. And we got Garrulous64 as a new host, and I think he's been doing an excellent job. And because Nick and Wayne's voices on this show were as kind of influential as they were, the idea was to kind of do a Sunset City 2.0, because it was gonna be different. But I am willing to admit that has been off to a bit of a rocky start, because we're also losing Suris and Gilly from the show too. So with myself as the only remaining founder and Garrulous64 as the sort of newcomer host, I understand that there is some concern that the sun may be setting on Sunset City once and for all. And I'm gonna be candid with you, I do feel that concern myself. I straight up grieved when Nick and Wayne left the show, and I'm gonna be doing it again now that Gilly and Suris are also gone. Because it was always kind of a source of comfort for me that no matter how rough the week had been, every Friday I'd get to sit down and talk to my friends. These specific ones anyway. And I think for a lot of people, that's what Sunset City was for them as well. Sunset City means a lot to me. This show, the name Sunset City, is kind of like a delineator of one of the best periods of my life. A time where I got to go on adventures with a bunch of new friends and just have a damn good time. So yes, if you do feel a bit iffy about the future of the show, if you are worried, if you are a little upset, trust me, I get it. And look, I want to be clear, we are all still friends. There's no drama. Yes, there have been occasions when communications have kind of fallen through. There have been a lot of occasions where it's been my own damn fault as well. But, we always come back, we always talk things out, we always talk to each other, so, it's never been a matter of, the friendship is on the rocks or anything like that. We're all still buddies. Whenever there have been times of, hardship and stuff, the old Sunset City cast, we've all been right back in that group chat, chatting as we always did. And that was always the heart of Sunset City. That was always what the show was all about. Was just a group of friends getting together to talk about Sonic. We're all Sonic fans, we've all got a lot of enthusiasm and passion for this franchise, and nothing better to do than sit down and talk about it. However, I wasn't necessarily friends with all of the members of Sunset City in the early days before we started recording. I was good friends with Nick, who introduced me to Suris at the time that my channel got hacked back in the day, and then he also introduced me to Wayne. And that sort of familial love between the four of us was something that was actually built up over the course of time from just regularly hanging out to be on this show. I didn't know Gilly the Kid until we had him on the show. There's a lot of people who I do talk to pretty regularly now who I didn't talk to before we had them on the show. But if you ask me where Sunset City kind of started to decline, I would say it was around the episode 50 mark or so. It was a point where, yes, we were all still friends, but the enthusiasm towards the show itself was kind of on the wane, pun not intended. You could see the energy was sort of starting to reduce, so even if we kept all of the members of the old cast, I do not think the show would be as good as it was in its early days. And even since the early days when we started to see the show start to kind of catch on, there was kind of an understanding that it wouldn't always be the same hosts. That it was very possible that someday there could be a completely unrecognizable podcast here, which is just some friends talking about Sonic. But that you wouldn't have Nick or Wayne or Suris or Gilly or me. We always liked the idea that this show was just kind of a safe space for Sonic fans to chat. And those first few episodes of Generation 2, I'm really proud of. As I've mentioned, absolutely no complaints towards Garrulous64. I chose him to be on this show not just because he's a very entertaining, very witty guy, but also because he's a really amazing friend. So let me put it this way. The show is about a group of friends with nothing better to do than sit down and shoot the shit about Sonic the Hedgehog. There's no shortage of people in the world with nothing better to do than talk about Sonic the Hedgehog. And just like Suris, back when Wayne and Nick left, I'm gonna keep this show going out of pure defiance. We've got me, we've got Garrulous64, and there's a lot of podcasts that can just thrive on having two people. But as it were, I don't just want to settle for a half-full Sunset City studio. Because I want to have a crew that kind of represents the different ends of the Sonic fanbase in the same way that the original crew did. Like, for example, we had, like, Nick, who had grown up with the original Sonic the Hedgehog, seen it all happen at the time of its inception. We have Suris, someone who very much sees the merit in the games that are considered to be part of the Dark Age. We've got Wayne, a die-hard Dreamcast-era fan. And then you got little old me, who's just fixated on this franchise and is just here for the shithousery. Whatever the next lineup is, I want us to represent those different corners of the fandom and the different age groups. So here's what's going to happen. Over the next few weeks, we are going to be having different guest hosts on the show, ranging from different YouTubers that you guys have suggested in the past, YouTubers that egirl64 and I are fans of, as well as YouTubers that egirl64 and I are friends with. So while egirl64 and I will be the two recurring hosts, the two Sunset City guys for the time being, we are going to have different guests on every week to talk about different subjects. Starting with this week, we're going to have a slightly later show. It's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as opposed to the usual 12 p.m. This week, we've got our pal, Gotta Be Frank. And we're going to be talking about all of the rumors of a Sonic Generations remaster. Last week, obviously, we had Webster on as well. And over those few weeks, you're going to see new friendships, new alliances, new perspectives, new debates, new discussions, and new jokes. You might even discover some of your new favorite YouTubers out of it. Heck, maybe we even get your favorite YouTuber on the show for all we know. And then by a certain point, there will be 2 shiny new hosts on the show alongside myself and egirl64. Let me be real. I am very emotionally invested in this show. I can talk about Sonic the Hedgehog for hours upon hours, and maybe it's down to the ADHD, maybe it's down to something else. I've spent a lot of my time and energy maintaining the channel, making new visual assets. So trust me, with my emotional investment in the show, if I'm not worried about it, you don't need to be worried about it either. I'm also not going to rule out that, hosts that have previously left the show may someday return for like a guest spot or something. I am not ruling anything out. Anything can happen. Also, don't worry about things like the show's success either. While, yes, things like super chats and views and all that do help us, they're not the main reason why we do this. So that's the update. I just wanted to reassure anyone that's not feeling so good about things. This show is in a very caring set of hands between myself and egirl64. This show, where a group of friends just sit down and talk about Sonic, is still going to go ahead. And maybe it's a little different to how you remembered it, maybe it's a little different to the show that you became a fan of, but if you stick with it, I'm sure you're gonna love what's ahead. So that's all from me today. Oh boy. Oh no. Alright, I gotta get out of here before that skeleton eats me. Goodbye, everybody.